Hi, everyone. It's Cheryl Hickerson with Females in Finance, and it is Valentine's Day. And my friend Kathi Balasek has come here to talk about love and grief, which was interesting when I had reached out to Kathi and said, "Hey, would you do a Tuesday topic?" And she's like, "Yeah, I want to do February 14th." And I thought, what a better way to go into Valentine's Day than to talk about grief. But she did make a good point. She says, you cannot have one without the other. You really made me think about it. And the other thing I want to say too, and then I'll let Kathi do the rest of the talking, and that is if you're not following her on Twitter, you have an enormous loss in your life and you should change that right now. And I mean it. I feel like every time I go in, she shares something and I'm like, oh, it's so good. I just, could quote her all the time. And she's just a good human being on top of all of that. So Kathi, welcome to the Tuesday topic. I'm glad you're
Thank you, Cheryl. Thank you, everybody who's here. I feel very, very grateful to share this day with you, this time, this topic. So,
Yeah, me too. And then I have to say this for everybody who does know me. Her front door, I just found out, is hot pink. I have set a whole new level of what's going to happen in this house. And poor Daryl has no idea what bomb's going to get dropped on him when I see him later in a few hours. So, because I've been trying to fight with our HOA about getting a pink door. This is a true story. And they deny me every time. So I may go for the forgiveness rather than permission. And I like that strategy, but away we go. Would you talk to everybody about your background and how you got involved with the work that you do today?
sure. I'm an educator. I teach at Chico State in California. And so I'm in love with training teachers, coaches. I've done it my whole life. And I I came by this becoming a young widow and experiencing widowhood in my 30s and raising 5 kids on my own and learning that widowhood is financial. Grief has so many financial components that continue to, I played tag with throughout
Yeah.
my life, basically. And so I started really diving into research and seeing where I could best fit my teaching skills and my passion, my mission. And I knew that I could help financial professionals in how to relate, talk, connect to people who are grieving. So that's how
So
it started.
yeah, and I'm kind of curious for those who are brave enough to have turned their video on. I'm a pretty, volunteer. They know this if they've been in Females in Finance for a second. I like to involve everyone. By a show of hands, how many of you feel as if, and I'm going to put my hand up because I already know the question and I know it's me. Uh, how many of you feel like you don't always know the right thing to say to somebody when there's loss? Thank you for being honest and human because it is very difficult. And I think the other thing too is that we often tie everything that has to do with grief to human beings. And it doesn't necessarily always mean that it's a human. It could be a pet, it could be a job, it could be that they've had to move and they're grieving the loss of friends. And I think understanding the structure of grief, like where we go through and how we do all of that. And I think your background in education is so important because it allows us to be able to just be vulnerable and say, it's me. I'm the problem. I don't know what to say. Right. I sounded like Taylor Swift for a hot second. I felt her just come right through me for a second. So I'm kind of curious. The first question I wanted to ask you that I wanted to go through is how are you, or how are we able to learn to show up with more heart and empathy, especially in financial services during a time that can be very difficult?
First
Can I?
of all, I am with you also. Sometimes I'm in scenarios too that I have to think back, okay, I have to practice my skills because I'm not sure what to say. I was at a financial convention and the leader told me that his son had died by suicide. And immediately I had to pull on my skills because this is not an easy thing. And to show up with more heart and sensitivity, it is really pushing us to not think inward. Because when we hear such sadness and grief and loss, we think about our life, our love, conversations we should be having. And the number one thing is to just meet people where they are. Try to be present. And in a meeting with a client, that's really difficult. And there's the whole world is ignoring a griever. I mean, I tell people I'm a widow, I can clear a room. I'm like the junior high dance with everybody's on two sides. And it's a very lonely existence. So what advisors can do is start building rapport with current clients, get to know them. Where are their families, their children? Where did they grow up? Because these conversations can't just happen in the storm. Clients want to talk about other things than money. They want to know that you have resources for caregiving, you have resources for divorce, widowhood, different types of loss. And if we're going to change the face of financial services and teach the world what we do, it has to be on that human side. Because I mean, there's a statistic out with the New York Life State of Grief, and they said 71% of people want to have these conversations with their professionals. So that's a big one. Prep your people now. Work from inside out. Start having these conversations. Let them know where these things are located. You don't have to steamroll someone and say, hey, let's talk about death. Okay. No. How about you put it in your messaging and you put it in your branding and you're weaving this story that all these things affect your money. And not only am I protecting your money, we got to talk about how your health and things that happen impact your money. I mean, that's a big piece of breaking the ice. And then if they know you talk about these things, it doesn't seem so awkward when there's a death. You're on the front lines. You're going to be one of the first people they call when somebody dies. So it makes sense that you're already practicing what to say, what to do, what not to say with your team already. I mean, I teach a program, it's called PACE, and the first one is preparedness. Train your team, teach them grief literacy skills. Have all your resources in place. Do you have grief resources in town? Do you have professional resources in town? How about community referrals? If you're on your own, whether it's divorced, widowed, widower, you don't know who to call. If the sink breaks, if your car breaks, you don't know who to trust. You no longer feel safe alone. You as an advisor, I had a wonderful one. Thank you. Thank you for what you do. I had a wonderful one. And if I needed something fixed in my house, I just called them. They gave me a wonderful person that I could trust. Because I kind of became a big fat fibber. People would call and say, can I stop by and show you this thing? Or I want to fix your fence. And I'm like, oh, my husband's in the backyard. He can't come to the phone. He can't, because you don't want a stranger in the house.
Yep.
So,
This is so relatable. And I also feel like too, even just, you feel like you want to be independent, like, or you want to keep moving on. And I would say that when I looked back over a lot of the posts or the things that I've shared over time, in 2021 to 2022, in the span of 8 days, I lost 4 family members. And I think many people remembered that. It started off with my ex-husband, he died. And I was very lost in what to do with that. December 27th, he died. And then on January 5th, my dad died. one of our family members, Adam, died, and one of our very close friends, Ray, family members, he also died on the same day. And I
Mm,
remembered that time frame going, no more. I could not take any more. And the ones who are much like you, and I remember you reaching out and how you were just so empathetic, like wherever you're at, and I'm here and whatever. There's a lot of times where, because we don't know what to say, what I experienced during that time, which actually did not help, was toxic positivity. It was a lot of these people like, chin up. It could be a worse day someplace else. Your worst day is better than somebody else's, bad day or whatever. I mean, all these things that people said to me that I thought were so highly inappropriate and so hurt. They actually hurt. They just didn't help. Maybe I should say that it wasn't hindering, maybe it just wasn't helping. And I kept thinking, we need such better human skills. Like
mhm.
we don't really know, Kathi, like, how do you sit next to somebody who's lost 4 family members in 8 days? Like, what do you say? I never wish I was not my bucket list was not on there to check that off. But it was like, and I picked Beth, and I are very good friends, but it's like Beth who just said, I love you.
Mhm,
It's all her text message to me said, I love you.
mhm.
That's it. That's
And
all I needed.
and
Thank you.
it's true, Cheryl, and that's to just show up,
Yeah.
to just share space, to just be there, to keep checking in, because there's a misconception about empathy. People think that they have to share the experience to be empathetic,
Mhm.
and you connect on the emotions. You know, what you told us all, Cheryl, and thank you for sharing that with us because I've learned from you and your experience, is that I can't associate with your experience, but I can imagine that it was overwhelm, sadness, uncertainty, what's going to happen next. And those are emotions that all of us in this room can connect on.
Yeah.
And so that's a key thing. And having some inclusive language of understanding that there's no hierarchy of grief.
Oh,
Loss is loss.
yeah.
And you talked about not knowing how to handle your ex-husband passing, the father of your children.
Mhm.
And many people in our world think that there's some degree. Well, that was your ex, so
Yeah.
somehow that's less. And so now we're going to try to quantify grief and put it on a hierarchy. But to that person, they lost their person. You lost the father of your children. You
Mhm.
lost a friend, somebody who you built part of your life with. And so we talk about, in understanding inclusive and showing up, is we have this unconscious bias, and we all have.
Amen.
Yes, that some losses are more important. Um, the type of death is worse than somebody else's death. Somebody who died by suicide or died by an overdose. We go into this judgment mode, or we think a spouse versus a child versus an aunt. To that person, they lost their person.
Yeah.
And it's really important that our language is like not saying, well, at least it wasn't your mother, or at least it wasn't this, or at least they lived a long life.
Oh,
Why
yes,
does
I've
that
heard that.
matter?
I know.
You lost your person. And so these things have just become automatic. And so part of my mission is to normalize conversations around grief that doesn't judge somebody's right to grieve however they want.
Does that resonate with everybody else right now? Dom, I know you also had your hand raised too, Claire,
Oh, no,
Christine.
I wasn't going with resonate. I was actually trying to give you guys a resource.
Oh,
Um, there's an organization that at MDRT Edge I learned about. We actually built folders. It's called Soaring Spirits International.
I feel like I've heard about that.
Yeah,
she
I know it. Mhm.
Yeah.
she's the woman that created it is a widow. She lost her husband young with young children,
Is
and they
that
have a whole.
Amy?
No, her name is Michelle Neff Hernandez.
Okay. Okay.
But we built 3,000 folders that we're going to go out to widows that didn't know they were going to be widows when we built the folders, and it has a whole bunch of resources that you can give to. Like I have folders that I can give to clients. Hopefully, I don't have to use them anytime soon. But I have folders that I built that I can get that has a whole bunch of resources. They have like different convention, like I don't want to call them conventions because they're not parties, but they get together and the kids actually ended up creating an organization for the kids. So when the widow goes to the meeting, the children go to the meeting with the children. So they get to really get to. So it's a fantastic resource, a nonprofit that I learned about that helps in this particular scenario because you don't have to know what to say. You're showing caring by giving them the folder, and that gives them all the answers and the resources that can help them.
Yeah, I think one of the things that, and I appreciate that, Dominic. I think one of the things that I want to see that I'm trying to build at Females in Finance, which makes it unique, in my opinion, is that I want to have us, besides the fact that we vet everybody, right? It's because we actually want to care. Like I know Christina who's on the call. Like I know her. And if something happened, I would want her to reach out to me and be like, hey, I need help, or hey, I just need a friend, or Carla, I already showed everybody before you got on the call. She's the one who made this, by the way, Kathy, I was showing you. I got my banner. I got my banner right here. And that's my love from Carla. But Claire, these individuals that are here, I get to really know them. And I think what we need to do, talk about normalizing things. There's not a single phone call that Beth and I ever leave that I don't say, I love you. Bye. Like, we're colleagues. We're friends, but we're colleagues. And like, we don't tell people or show people that type of love. Like, it's because it's so business, right? And instead, I feel like we need to have a deeper connection to our feelings in the work that we do too. I think there's so much, it's transactional, and I want to see us be able, and it sounds very kumbaya, trust me, friends, when I say this out loud all the time, I'm like, gosh, I know what I sound like. But I really do want it to be someplace special that people can have feelings and be exactly where they're at. Because the thing that during the time when I went through that really crazy week of life, of just all the experience, it was my husband, Daryl, who said, because, here I've lost my children lost their dad. And I was sitting in the office and he walked up to me and he said, you spent 25 years of your life with this person, half of your life. And it is okay to cry. Like, it is just okay. And I'm not going to feel less than or slighted in some way. And I was like, it felt like such a relief to hear that, because I did, and for those of you who don't know me, when I got divorced, he walked outside with a cup of coffee in his hand and his chest started hurting. He fell to the ground. And when he fell, it was the corner of a flower pot. He hit his head and he died instantly, they said. So it was the heart attack started it, but that's actually how he passed away, which is terrible. Right. And what I would hear is then my dad died, he was 82, and they'll say, at least you had a long life with him. I wanted some more years. Thank you very much. I would have taken them. And then I'll say things like, when my mom died when I was 6, well, at least you had those 82 years with your dad. And I'm like, I never understand those answers, because I'm thinking how do you compare them? They're apples and oranges, in my opinion, but we're all guilty of it. Because I know I've used toxic positivity for sure. Like, oh, get on your horse and you can ride it again. You're going to do this. It's fine. And learning how to sit in discomfort. We don't teach people how to do that, do we, Kathy, very often?
No. And here's the thing, who's taking care of the advisor?
Yeah.
I think a lot about that, because you are serving people through a ton of different transitions. And, things can't be cheered away. Grief can't be fixed. You can show up, you can listen to learn, but that's all you can do.
Yeah.
And you can empower with resources and support and help them feel safe. But as people, you know, we try to justify, we try to dismiss loss. We basically, when somebody says things like Cheryl just said about, at least they did this, they're just basically saying, I don't want to talk about it.
Mhm.
Let's move on. When there is tremendous energy in empathy, and when you can meet someone where they're at in their emotions, there's something that ignites, and that person, that client leaves you lighter, more hopeful, more supported. But as a society, we hear of a loss and they're like, oh, you poor thing. I mean, our body language
Yeah.
changes, everything. But it's just the opposite. We know that compassion and empathy, you can compound money. You know that part. We're going to compound compassion, because that has to happen the whole route. Because the reality is, specifically women, they're at a disadvantage. And we know they live longer. 80% of men die married. You will have the longest relationship with a woman, and most likely they will be a widow. And the average age of widows is 59. So we're not talking needs of retirement. We're talking needs of still in the workforce, children at home, college, going back to work. I was a young widow, and all of the financial things, a pension, Social Security limitations, bereavement leave, really affected me. I went back to work. I got another degree just so my kids would have insurance. So much of where I help advisors is, I'm not helping their clients. I'm helping the advisor connect best and find out who they are in this whole conversation. Because when you can show up with more heart and sensitivity, you become more human. You become a better person, a better father, a better mother, a better community member, because now we're used to having these conversations. Because everybody in this room has experienced grief.
Yeah.
Let's empower our clients.
It's really, and talking about the widowhood part, and the most of the men know that they're much more on borrowed time than even women are, on this planet. I got up this morning, and I don't know how many of you saw that Dave Hollis died. I don't know if you know that name, but remember Rachel Hollis and her talk about
Yes.
she okay. So Dave Hollis was her ex-husband, and they got divorced in 2020, and he's 47 years old and died of a heart-related thing. We don't know all the details of it, but I got up and I looked at that and I thought, what an interest. I mean, that's such a young age, and we're seeing that. It's not uncommon. It's not unknown. It's not, this happens. And I keep thinking to myself, even in the divorce situation, because I know Beth and I have worked in insurance for a long time. I think, Dominic and Christina's done taxes for a lot of years, and she's doing financial advising now. There's a lot that even in the divorced person part of it, right? That you still have some planning that probably needs to happen, especially if children together and things of that nature. So that's where I think even the grief literacy part of this, the work that you do becomes not just for the married couple where somebody's, but there's even people who are separate, have separated and gone different ways, but they have things that tie them together, and they still have to be able to get through that. And sometimes it's I got to tell you, out of all of the grief that I experienced, that was the most of the awkward ones that I had, because I got divorced because we didn't get along, but he was my children's dad, and I didn't want him to pass away the way he did. And I had all these torn feelings, and just to have people who sat with me and said, you can be weird in this. It's okay. Because I really didn't know what I was supposed to be feeling. I was like, and then I got through it and it was okay. And people like yourself and many others reached out and were just like, you do what you got to do. I'm here if you want to talk. But you're right. A lot of us are like, I don't know how to deal with that. So I'm just going to say, get well, so, feel better soon or whatever that looks like. How do people go about learning grief literacy? What does that look like, that process?
What it looks like is, first of all, we talk about grief awareness. You don't have to be a grief psychologist. I'm not a grief counselor or anything, but to really have an awareness that grief is not linear. It never goes away. We learn to walk alongside grief. We have life and we have birth, but grief and joy walk alongside each other. And there's several models of grief, but they don't follow a path. It could be all over the board. You could have somebody who's very sad for the first year, and 10 years later, they're experiencing signs of grief. A lot of the terminology, like disenfranchised grief or anticipatory grief. I teach these concepts because anticipatory grief is not death, but what you experience prior. I mean, if you have a parent that has cognitive delays or are caregiving, you're experiencing grief. It's a loss of who they were. Think about all your clients. Who's having a health problem right now? Who's taking care of someone? Who has a son or daughter that has infertility issues? I mean, these are things we know about our clients. They're experiencing grief. And so what an opportunity to reach out, okay, before the death. That's one thing we talk about. We talk about getting all your ducks in a row for grief literacy. Knowing your clients, building up rapport with both members of the couple. We talk about action steps. What do you do? What do you say when you call that person? They just lost their mother. They're your client. You need to call them. What do you send? How do you respect religious preferences? Do you go to the service? Do you not? What do you say? How do you set up that first meeting? Okay, so that's a big piece of it. And then I go straight in with communication. We script, we practice what to say, what not to say. We train our team. Because people are like, well, it just doesn't feel authentic. Well, I know, because it's not. We have to write it, script it, say it, practice it. And then things will start to become natural. And then the last piece of grief literacy that I teach is how to empower your client moving forward. That griever that came to you lost their whole life. Those puzzle pieces were scattered in the street, and they're putting them together, but they don't even see the picture on the box. They can't imagine their world moving on without this person. And so to help them, protect them from who might take advantage of them and how to do that, care about things that they care about. Pension, Social Security, taxes, housing decisions, and advocate for them. I work with Modern Widows Club, and I work with Wings of Widows, and we have some positive things for that widow group, and we're making some positive things for financial advisors, because it's not a one-stop shop. I just got to learn what to say and done. This is a long-term thing that is going to make you better as an advisor. It's going to give you a distinction beyond anybody else. Because here's the thing, we aren't having conversations anymore.
Yeah.
And we're definitely not, these are those conversations hearts, right?
Yeah.
What if they all said things about how to say something to grievers, how to talk to a person who's grieving? Like, I wish I'd have known your mom. I miss your dad's sense of humor. I just loved your husband, John. Imagine if those were the conversations that we gave, because grief and love are the same. These conversations are the same. And just because you lost someone 20 years ago, did that change how much you love them? You know,
So
it
good.
didn't. It doesn't change.
So good. I'd love for everybody who's here, if you have questions, to feel free to ask Kathy to talk. There's Claire. She's already off mute. She was waiting.
Well, first of all, Kathy, I really want to thank you for saying dying by suicide and not committing suicide, because that words matter, and I think that's huge. And I wish advisors would pick up on that as well. And my sister was a widow at 43. And I think one of the biggest things is it's not just after the event. It's been since 2005 since her husband died. And even on their anniversary, the first couple of times I didn't even know how to recognize it. And I think those are kind of some of the things too that come up, that, it's not just the event in the first year, but subsequent, and how dealing with that.
If you have thank you, Claire. I'm so glad to see you. There's so many opportunities for you to acknowledge a special date. I mean, a Valentine, Valentines and widows. I mean, I could start day drinking if I really needed to, because it's a tough day, right?
Yeah.
And to have a separate way that you either call that person all the time, you take them to lunch on that day, you send them a personal card, because I don't think any type of card truly nails it. You write it down. And people are like, well, I don't know if I should. I don't know if I don't. Maybe you should just do it and let them figure out their life. It's kind of like, oh, we have an event, but it's a brand new widow, and should we invite them? Everybody loves an invite. They can choose whether they come or they don't. So having a plan of gifting and communication with cards and events is really important for all your grieving clients. And I'm just sending care to you and your sister, Claire.
So beautiful. And that is a good point. Like, you don't know what to do. So I think it's like you said, just do it. And
we talk ourselves out of a lot of things, or we get on social media because we know somebody died, and then we read what other people wrote to that person. And then we think, well, should we write? Should we not? Should I call? Should I private message? And then by the end of the day, we've talked ourselves out of doing it.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's really, a really fair point. Anyone else? Yeah, go ahead, Christine.
When I lost my mom, a coworker reached forward and said, feel everything, feel it all, find your new normal. It was enough for me. It worked. I don't know if that's enough for somebody else, but it was enough for me.
Wait, sorry, can you repeat that, please?
She said, feel all your feels, find your new normal.
I think that's super powerful, Christine. I really do. Because when my dad died and I was with him, his only request of me is he wanted to die in his home. He's like, please, please, please don't put me and I didn't. I took 3 weeks off work and hospice, and I sat next to him holding his hand. And, and when he passed away, and, doggone it, don't you know that man waited till I got all the way home. Then he passed away. We didn't wait while I was right there, which was, and,
He did it for you.
Yeah, and
it protected you.
I think that one of the things that, to your point, I remembered sitting there, and I had already been through and had a lot, my kids were already grieving for their dad, and now their grandpa just died, and who's my dad, right? And I sat there, and Daryl said same thing. He just let it out, because I felt like it was way down deep inside, and I didn't know, and Daryl and I are still newly married for those, 3 years into this marriage, and I feel like we went through the altar and said, all those vows, let's just check them all out. Let's just see if they all work. Let's get a pandemic in here. Let's just do everything. But I did. I let it all out. And he just let me feel. And I have a new normal, Christine. I really do. Because the hardest thing that I still have to this very day to get to my children, I have to drive by the exit of my dad's house, who doesn't live there anymore. And since I was 13 years old, we lived in that house. So I still look at the exit and I'm like, man, I grieve not being able to get up there and just do my normal, like driving by his house kind of thing. But he doesn't live there anymore. So I really appreciate the new normal thought.
I do too. Christine, what's your mom's name?
Diane.
Diane. Thank you for sharing that about Diane.
Aw, thank you.
Miss Carla, you want to say something?
I'm having a gummy bear. Um, uh, I just want, I love the words that you shared, but my friends that I have, most of them, unfortunately, are not married, and their pets are their children. And one of the things that people don't really understand unless you have pets of your own, they are little people in your family because you treat them like little people, which is why the Super Bowl commercial about the farmer's dog got as many heartfelt emotions, because people could relate to how a pet is part of the family through all the different phases. But a friend of mine recently lost her 2 cats. She'd had them for 18 years. So it was a long time she had them. And their health was just not improving, and they were just starting to decline. And she made the decision to let them rest, to send them home. And that was very hard for her. And she did it by herself. And I was saying to her, why don't you call me? Why don't you? She said, because she didn't want anyone to talk her out of it. And I said, I would just been there for moral support. I'm not, it's your decision. And that's one of the things that sometimes people don't understand. It's a very hard decision to let go. And sometimes you just need someone who's just going to hug you. They're not going to offer any words. And that's the role that I played with her. I just was there to support her. And I asked her to tell me about things that they did at various ages, so that we live in the moment of remembering, her 2 adorable fuzzy babies who had their own unique personalities. So in addition to our parents who, it's expected, having pets when you're a single person, that's as close as to maternal as you are going to get. And it's the transition is not necessarily appreciated in some circles.
Thank you for sharing that. I can relate to that in some sense. And for many people, you're right. Their fur babies are their babies. Not everybody has children. Not everybody wants children. I recently spoke at a retirement coaches event. That was one of the #1 things of what to say when one of the retired clients loses their pet. Loss is loss. It's their loss, and to acknowledge it. I loved how you talked about the memories of the cats, and ask the names of the cats and what they'll miss. What often people will say is, well, you'll just get a new cat. As if, or I know exactly how you feel. My dog died last year, and nobody likes to take over artists. So you did the exact right thing. Cheers. You get jazz hands today.
I know one thing that we do at Females in Finance for the members, if they have a pet that passes away, we always make a donation to the Arbor Day Foundation and get trees planted in their honor and send them the certificate to let them know that their pet, that we've done this so their pet has a legacy. Because I think that, to Carla's point, they are somebody else's child for some, for all, trust me, I've seen how some of these pets are treated. My kids are going, wait a second, hold on. We didn't grow up like that. And so I want to acknowledge that in a way that I felt like is honorable, kind of honors and gives them some legacy of something that seems to have been appreciated by the members. So I don't know if it's the right thing to do, but to your point, I just did it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's been very, very well received, but sometimes it's just like hard because I can't associate all the time. Like, I don't know about that particular pet.
What if something terrible has happened to someone and now I have just waited so long? I'm like, I feel like, is it stupid at this point to send something? And then on top of it, I don't even know what to say because it's so terrible.
I love this question and thank you for the courage to ask it because we can all associate with that. You reach out, it doesn't matter amount of time. There's no etiquette, okay? Because honestly, the griever is in grief fog. They've got a gazillion things to do, okay? Just do something, whether you call, you text, you write, you send a gift. But this is what you say. This is universal. This is what I tell everybody. Just get some blank note cards. Okay? Have you ever been down the hole of trying to find the perfect greeting card? It doesn't exist. Just get some blank cards and say, "Dear Sally, I was saddened by the loss of your mom, Jane. She just brought a light to the room, and I see it in you too. I'm sending you all the care in the world." And then your name. All you have to do, say their name, offer a condolence, tell a memory or something they're known for or something you remember, and then sign your name. That's enough. And then it breaks the ice because the handwritten notes are the keepers. You know, my husband passed over 15 years ago. I still have a box of all the handwritten notes. And I go and read them. So it's never too late.
I would even say, Christina, that sometimes like I have some, like my friend, like Judy Hoberman, a lot of us know Judy, and she was really close to her mom. And even once in a while, she'll post something on Facebook where she'll talk about it. I'll take the time just to pull out a card and put it in the mail and say, "I saw you talking about your mom and I know it's on your mind and you're on your heart. I see you, you know, and I love you," or whatever. And Judy's like, "You always, that's what we want to do, is we want to be seen, like that part of it." Cause it's just to me very raw. Beth, you look like you're getting ready to say something.
I was gonna say for Christina, I mean, one, this conversation is just, it's so impactful and it's something that I think that we don't talk about often enough. But to Christina's point, there's no playbook for how grief is. I mean, grief is a whole beast that you don't even know exists until you experience it. And it can be debilitating and it can be something that pops up 5 years. You know, it's not like it's just, I think a lot of people think, oh, somebody passes away and you have this 30 or 60-day window where it's like all your grief is out and people just forget. They don't come back and realize that grief is a huge process. And so it doesn't matter, I was going to say, it doesn't matter when you reach out because it's the feeling of, okay, you are thinking of me and you know that my grief is real and that it still exists. I had a friend who recently lost her mom at the end of last year. And I knew like she was being so incredibly strong. And she said, I feel guilty because I feel this way, but I also am missing her so much. And she had this crazy outpouring of love from everybody sending flowers and cards and all of this. And the anniversary of her mom's passing came up and I sent her, you know, just a small note and some flowers. And I said, I just wanted to let you know, I'm just thinking of you and I hope this brightens your day. And she called me and she said, oh my gosh, I had to throw away everything. Like I saved everything too. It was the point of I couldn't save it anymore. And I had grief just throwing that stuff away. And the fact that you were thinking of me, it really made everything, it just made me feel better. So it doesn't matter.
You talked about, yeah.
Oh, sorry. Well, I'm just going to say something and also ask a question. To piggyback of whatever everybody was saying too, sometimes if the death is dramatic, people are going through the motions at the beginning, so they don't really remember who was there with them at the beginning. So they might not be thinking of, oh, such and such, it's been whatever, 10, 15, 30 days, 2 months, and somebody hasn't reached out to me. Like they might just appreciate that. One of my parents, sort of like best friends, he was like an uncle to me. He died, like he was murdered basically in front of the wife, and my parents like rushed to help her in the hospital when that happened, and she doesn't even remember. At some point, like my mom was talking to her and she's like, were you at the hospital? Like my parents helped her with everything and she couldn't remember. She kind of blocked that. So she couldn't remember who was there, who wasn't, who went to the funeral and all that. So I think just reaching out helps regardless of when you do it. And if it's somebody personal and they know that, let's say if they know you and they know, let's say you have ADHD or something, you get distracted, or they might not really care. They might just appreciate that that you did reach out. But the question that I have, and it's interesting with the topic today, I thought today was a different topic. This is my first time logging in, so thank you. My coworker just lost her daughter last night, and I started a text and I didn't even finish it because I don't even know what to say. Her daughter is like, my coworker's in her 60s. Her daughter is like a little bit older than me. I'm 40. I think she's like 40 something. And it's just terrible. I mean, to the point, I'm so clueless that to the point that I even posted on Facebook, like, what should I, because she's also, I don't know if there's anybody who's a Jehovah's Witness or something in this forum. Like, I don't know what the costumes are and everything. And I don't want to be rude and I want to reach out to her, but I don't really know what to say to her, because I feel like I can't even imagine. I'm a parent. I can't even imagine what it's like to lose a child that she was very close to. And it was sudden too. It wasn't like she was sick. I feel like sometimes if you know that somebody's sick, you kind of expect it. So I don't know if anybody has any suggestions, or if somebody by any chance is a Jehovah's Witness, they can tell me what not to say. I don't want to offend her either. So
I'm going to jump in there.
Okay.
Thank you for sharing this. Wow, that must have been, I mean, devastating for you too, because you're a parent and we think about those things, and how many of us have either written something or typed something or text something and just like, I just don't know what to say and not send it. We all can relate to that. My recommendation is call your friend, call your coworker. Most likely she will not answer the phone, but she can hear your voice in a message saying, I care about you. I care about your loss of your daughter. And if you know the daughter's name, say the name. I'm here for you. And I'm just sending loads and loads of care. And then hang up.
Thank you.
It doesn't have to be inspirational or religious or anything. Just let her hear that she's not alone and that you care. That's what's most important.
Thank you.
That piece about with Christina talking about the length of time, how something can go by. And I want to show you guys something that I keep it on my desk. So Christmas, my mom died when I was 6. And when you have times like that, sometimes you don't remember things the way they used to be. And she had like this little grave, picture of my parents. It's 3-dimensional. I forgot that I've always looked at my picture of my mom as a flat piece of paper. Okay. Do you know, I became extremely, I was very, very emotional on Christmas Day because it showed her cheekbones. Like I forgot that she had cheekbones. You don't think about it when you look at a flat piece of paper, right? And then all of a sudden when you're looking at it and you're like, my mother has cheekbones, like it took everything and made it into this thing. Do you know that even though that happened, oh my gosh, I was 6 and I'm 52, 46 years ago, doing the math. That was the most unbelievably thoughtful gift, even though it was 46 years after. She doesn't know my mom. She doesn't know anything, but she knew that I love my mom and I've got pictures of her in my house and stuff like that. And I felt like that was such a thoughtful thing to do, even though it's 46 years later, because I've also heard people, Kathy, say things like, you should be over it by now. You know, you got to get over it. You got to get through. I hate that a lot when I hear that. You don't get through it. It's with you. It becomes a part of who you are. The grief does.
It is. And I think, you know, my mother's a widow. I'm a widow. My sister-in-law's a widow. I lost my dad. But you know what? They're with me every day.
Yeah.
I talk to them every day. So much of who I am is from my dad. My husband didn't teach me about death. He taught me how to live.
Hmm.
And love and grief make us feel. When we don't want to acknowledge one or the other, we stay at this center. That's not joy. That's numb. And so we want to get out and feel grief deeply, feel love deeply. That's where you will become closer to people, to clients, when you can lean in. Because your clients want to know you. They want to know your life too. You know, your business isn't about, you know, your practice or the name on the business. Your business is you. And this is the one area where you can really become friends like that when you can meet them in their grief.
Well, this was spectacular. I know we usually do these for 30 minutes, but this was an important topic today, I think. And I appreciate you extending out and spending some extra time and answering questions. We'll definitely have the replay available for those, and we'll make sure they have your contact information, Kathy, because I feeling people will be reaching out to connect and talk to you. You are really, I mean, as heavy as a topic as grief might be, you are such a light in this space, and you actually take a weight off of a lot of things that are very difficult for people to understand, to fully understand where we need to be. And I like, one of the things I love about children is they are still so happy being humaning. Like, they feel things deeply, everything they feel deeply, and we forget how to do that. And so I think a lot of the things that you're talking about are actually very childlike for us to go back to and say, I see you, or hi friend, or, you know, the little things that little children do. And so you're just reminding me of just how hard it is sometimes for us to get back to just being 101 human. And then this has just been wonderful. And I appreciate all of you too for having questions today here for Kathy. Any final words before we part, Miss Kathy?
I just want to say, I'm sending you all the love, success. Go out and meet as many people as you can, because you here showing up, this is who people need.
Amen.
So
So good.
thank you.
So good. Well, thank you everybody for being here. We'll have their play up, and
Thank you,
look forward
Kathy.
to seeing you next
Thank
week on Tuesday Topic. So take care, friends.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Bye, friends.